Hello, welcome back. For those of you who had an opportunity to network with some of the people at the table, I hope you got to know at least a couple of people there. We'll have more networking opportunities today, which please reach out and connect with people. And now we're going to get started with our first event, our first session of the day. It is going to be a roundtable discussion. And the topic is Alchemize thinking from process to experience centricity. As Devyani had mentioned in her opening speech, that over the last 20, 30 years, the world has moved from largely process thinking, which was back in the 20th century. We used to talk about process engineering, or process improvement, to now where we are talking about not just a linear world, but we're talking about a multidimensional world, which is these days being referred to as experience, so experience-centric world that we live in. So, how is the operational excellence and the continuous improvement, let's initiatives that are pursued by organization need to be reformulated, need to be alchemized in order to make it more effective? And to discuss that, I've been joined by esteemed panelists from all over the world. So I'll first start with Naveed Khawaja, who is based in Pakistan right now, although he's based in the UK, and he is the Chief Vision Officer of Infomatrix. And then we have Julio Corridor, who is in Saudi Arabia, and he's the asset manager at AHC. Then we have Liz Ferguson, who's the Senior Director of Business Excellence at Calix. And finally, we have Sari Suhanan, who is the Global Lean Transformation Lead at ABB, and she's based in Finland. Liz is in the UK, and so with that, let me pass on the mic to Sari to do a formal introduction of who you are and what is it that you do.
So hello, I'm Sari Suhanen, Global Lean Transformation Lead at ABB. Those of you who don't know ABB, we are a leading global technology company with over 130 years of history, around 100,000 employees with the global coverage, operating in over 100 countries. For business areas, electrification, motion, process automation, robotics, and discrete automation. I work within ABB electrification, with our challenge is to be more smart and safe, enabling sustainable electrification, and of course, to be able to grow further. And then me, well, I'm a lean master black belt, a lean enthusiast. I live and breathe lean thinking. I try to do it at home, get sometimes complaints about that, but I try to, especially at work, to give and pass on the information for the key people in the organization. I work with all levels within the organization. I'm passionate about the operational excellence and lean thinking. I've been doing a process development with various roles in mobile phone manufacturing industry and across various other industries while my times of the consultancy, in total over 25 years. And it's great to be here, and I love the topic. Alchemize our thinking from process to experience centricity. So I will pass on to the next person on the table with these words.
Excellent. In my table, I can see Liz sitting next to you. So Liz, your introduction.
Hi, I'm Liz Ferguson, Senior Director for Business Excellence at Calix. Calix is a life sciences company, and we support clinical trials, including recently some of the vaccine trials, but also a lot of work in oncology and medical imaging, and supporting the pharmaceutical industry in successful trials and identifying new treatments. It's my first time in life sciences. I only joined at the beginning of the year. So I think continuous improvement is so powerful in that you can move between industries and still have a really significant impact. It's been a great journey and really, really amazing to be in a company which is so open to the opportunities, and a lot of it very experience based as opposed to just purely process. And prior to Calix, I was a consultant for about 15 years, working for Shell, BBC, Nestle, Lloyd's Register. And I've worked in insurance. I've helped led deployments on continuous improvement in Royal Sun Alliance, and started my journey as a as an engineer, an automotive engineer with Jaguar, which is where I got my Master Black Belt some 20 plus years back. And similarly to Sari, I'm very passionate about the difference that continuous improvement can make. But the main way of making a difference is by engaging the whole business and really getting across what's in it for them, both the business and the individuals in the business. So I think this is a great topic to discuss.
Excellent. Thank you, Liz. Julia. Or should I call you Julia? Because I always get confused. What's the best way?
I respond to both. Anything that finishes with LIO, I respond to. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julio Corredor. I'm originally from Colombia. I got immersed into the world of Six Sigma when I was doing my last jobs with Starwood Hotels and Resorts. At the time, that was the only hotel company that was really running a team of internal Six Sigma trained people. They were running the Department of Operational Innovation. So I got trained as a black belt at the time. We did a lot of trainings inside the organizations for different hotels based out of the corporate office. And then Marriott acquired Starwood a couple of years back, and I'm happy to say that they still continue with a Six Sigma oriented mentality. I currently work as an asset manager for a hotel development company in Saudi Arabia. So there is a lot of work for us with the Vision 2030 and the way Saudi Arabia wants to open to tourism and to hotels to diversify their economy. In my head, my motto is, if you have happy employees, you will have happy guests. And if you have happy guests, you will have happy owners. So I think in hotels, when you compare it to production lines, there's a lot of changes because in hotels, you deal with emotions. In a production line, it's binary, right? It's yes or no, and then you have your tree. And that's how things get executed. So in hotels, it's slightly different and a lot of feeling is involved, but it's really interesting to see how we can apply these concepts of Lean, of Six Sigma, into our day-to-day to make sure the guests are happy. It's also a pleasure to be here in this conference with you today. Thank you, Arnivan, who we've met back in Dubai a couple of years back, and we've kept in touch. So looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Thanks, Julio, and absolutely welcome to our session here. And we're going to come back on that experience side of things very, very shortly. Naveed.
Thanks, Arina. So my passion and purpose is to unlock people's true potential. And that I achieve by helping teams in training, coaching, and mentoring for purpose-powered profitability. And by that, I mean business agility at all ends. That means a continuous improvement culture development from individuals to teams to organizations to departments to overall global presence that they have. And it is beyond making money. Optimizations to me are just a step towards a bigger goal. Uh, Having all these reviewed all these philosophies and frameworks of Agile, Lean, Kanban, Lean, Six Sigma, and been part of this for about 2 decades now, uh, I haven't found anything more powerful than having all of these things with a purpose. And I love helping organizations transform their thinking, their leadership into how to actually motivate people with a purpose beyond making money, and also helping them becoming highly efficient, developing their cultures in a very positive, collaborative, efficient, um, continuous improvement culture in there. And then the last part is, for me, those three key concepts by Dan Pink, the autonomy, mastery, purpose. That's what really drives me. Whenever I go anywhere, I help organizations. Um, I help them understand what their true being is. So when you enable people to be themselves, you are unlocking their true potential, and they get their motivation. That motivation drives the mastery side of things. You give them autonomy; they be themselves in a continuous learning culture, and you align that with a purpose, and you see amazing results. So that's who I am. That's what I love to do, and looking forward to this, and really pleased to be part of this such a very highly qualified and amazing panel. I was doubting myself whether I should be here or not, but you included me, so thanks for that.
Thanks, David. Thanks for those kind words. And absolutely, what I always believe in is that each one of us who've got at least a few years of experience behind us are standing on top of a mountain, which I call our own stories and insights. And by the time you've gone through a few years, you have tremendous potential of developing your own insights, your own opinion on what works versus doesn't work. So, in spite of all the learning that you may have done through classrooms or through reading books, etc., one thing that is unique to each one of us is insight. And that's why our company is called Roundtable Insights. It is that purpose of extracting those insights, and from that perspective, Naveed, you're also standing on a mountain. So, um, uh, with a sketchy network connection that I give, but this is good start. Okay, now before I ask Julio to give a bit of an perspective on the experience, I wanted to sort of ask our audiences if you guys have any questions or if you have any thing to add. Please put down your questions either in the chat box or in the questions box. We will have a couple of rounds of audience interaction, so be prepared. Put down your questions or any reflections that you may have, or if you want to add anything to what our panelists are saying, and if required, we can also bring you to stage to have a live interaction here. So please do that. We absolutely encourage you. And as we're going through the roundtable discussion, keep adding stuff to the chat and the questions. So with that, Julio, let's start with you being in the center of the experience world, the hospitality world. What have you seen as changing in the way, let's say, process improvement or continuous improvement was done back in the late 90s, early 2000s versus now?
Thank you. I think what we've seen in the industry as a whole is that the amount data is utilized has changed dramatically. If you would take any process improvement back in the day, you would look at certain data points. But the way this data was analyzed, at least in hotels, it wasn't really analyzed to the level or to the extent that it could be analyzed. And part of it was basically trying to have the team that was leading Six Sigma projects to communicate this data to the different team members. So there were a lot of different processes to convey messages, to help people to understand why should I do this way and not this other way, which I've been doing it for the last 15 years. Right? So I think that was a lot of potential roadblocks and information that was always being able to be transformed with data. And when data was visualized, you go, you collect it, you visualized, and you really break it down to little bite-sized pieces, people started to understand. I remember when I was doing trainings that I would always give them the Formula One example, right? When F1 started, a pit stop would last nearly a minute 15, a minute 20, right? Today, it lasts like 15 seconds or less than 15 seconds, sorry. So the change was gigantic. And the same way we do in our hotels. So when we look at data points and we say, okay, the time for check-in, the time to complete a booking, how long do we need, what inputs do we require, and do we really require all of them, has really allowed us to change the way things are done. And as I said earlier, visualization really helps to get this across, because it's simpler for people that work in hotels. You have housekeepers, you have waiters, you have people that haven't gone through universities, so they're very eager to learn and they're very motivated to learn and grow through the ladder in the organization. And these trainings give them this platform to show their skill, to capitalize on the potential. And when they have the energy to do so, people were getting promoted because of their development and delivery of Six Sigma projects. Regardless if they were a team member, then they became team leaders, and some of them actually went for green belt training. So that was really putting them in the development ladder. So data, it's really the in and out of what we do in the industry.
Absolutely. I think the perspective that you talked about data, which was still available back in the sort of late 90s and early 2000s, but the nature and the quality and the quantity of data that's available now is very, very, I would say, much bigger chunks are available, and therefore we can get a lot more insights from those. Sorry, you are part of a traditional industry, ABB, with its electrification. What are some of the changes that you're witnessing? And what's your perspective on the topic?
Well, I would like to reflect to the both of the Julia's and Navid's comments that you said earlier. What I think, what we need, of course, we always need the purpose. We need to have our mission. But the challenge we are changing strategy every second year, or maybe sometimes even in a half year. So when we don't get good performance, we change the leadership. So that's one of the dilemmas we've been having with the company. And that's kind of like, it shuts down it hurts the motivation, it hurts the purpose, and people are a little bit lost within the organization. So at such a large company as we are, this is one of the syndromes that we are facing at the moment. So if I talk with the lean terms, I'm talking about the MOVRI, I'm talking about the waste, the highest level of waste, decision making. So which then hinders the organization to be really, let's say, motivated, having an autonomy and having the purpose. So what we need to do, and what is the lean transformation challenge we have within the organization, is that we need to find the discipline. We need to find the discipline in all levels. So Navid, you referred to the lean books, you didn't found anything. But I think the fundamental thinking is there, that we need to work on all levels within the organization. We need to work on the workforce level, we need to work on the middle management, and we need to brainwash the leadership to really get the understanding that the way forward is that we need to have a strategic goals, we need to have a long-term strategy, and meanwhile we need to inbuild this continuous improvement culture within the organization on all levels. And that's not so easy to do what it may sound like. It's easy to do maybe on the workforce level. Those, as you referring to Julio's, you said you have people who are less education, they are really eager to learn. But when you try to change the stubborn management team, it's not so easy to do. But it's extremely important that we do it on all levels. So maybe that's the challenge that we are having. And one more thing I want to add is the data. Yes, we need to go and look for the data. We have a lot, but we also need to be cautious how we use it and how we analyze it. And that's where we need our people to tell us on the shop floor that are we actually making the right assumptions. So not only looking at the numbers, but also walking the gemba on the shop floor. That's extremely important. And having the leadership and the middle management to be engaged on that work. So I would say those are the challenges that we are facing at the moment.
Thanks for sharing that, Sari. Navid, let's talk about some of the pieces that you mentioned. So the purpose, power, profitability, and our perspective. You know, because the thing that you talk about are more on the sort of power skills, the behavioral skills. I would like to hear your perspective on the topic of being process-centric to experience-centric, and how have you seen the world evolve over the last 15, 20 years in this space?
Yeah, thanks. Well, great comments, great insights, Sari and Julio. Really appreciate your in-depth understanding. I am completely aligned with what you're saying. I've got some parallel perspectives on these, so I'll help you get around this. What I think. Any organization, any successful organization that really wants to grow, that really wants to scale up and to be highly efficient and profitable. Yes, information-based decision-making is key. Intuition-based decision-making causes a lot of disruption in many organizations. So one of the aspects of our purpose is helping organizations transform from being an intuition-based decision-making organization to an information-based decision-making. But we don't stop there. I think one of the key things that we all need to appreciate is, what is information? Is a process, is an initiative in a process optimization enough to understand what information to use for continuous improvement? From my perspective, no. It is only one side of the picture. What we miss out on is all the information about people. What is the emotional side of things? What does the emotional data tell us about how the organization is going on? Sorry, your comment about the organization, the team level, the department level, and all those, and you separated out the leadership side. One of the key things is if we have a common purpose, so the leadership will drive that in all their conversations, in all their decisions, in all their strategic vision definitions. But when you translate it into execution, it's the people. And it's not just the process they're following, it's their emotional being that is applied to a situation. Unfortunately, we don't capture that information. That information is lost. We try to treat people as robots. And when we treat them as robots, they act like robots, meaning you follow this, okay, we'll do that. There's no autonomy, they lose their motivation, and ultimately the organization suffers. From my perspective, I feel that there is much more information that needs to be captured before we say we are an information-based decision-making organization. And as some of the organizations have done that. I'll just refer the Henry Ford's statement that is so very close to my heart. So when he brought the Industrial Revolution, he was the one who doubled the wages. He was the one who took away the craft from people and put them on the conveyor belt where they were just button pushers. So they lost their craft, but they were paid almost double of their salaries at that time. The same Henry Ford who took away those unique skills, the true potentials of people, he also said at the same time, a business that makes nothing more than money is a poor business. A business that makes nothing but money is a poor business. How does that relate? For me, it is all about helping people be themselves in an organization. Processes need to give autonomy to people to be themselves. That emotional data needs to be captured, and then information is used for better decision making in all of that context. And one of the important points is when we are using the traditional data or traditional information to make decisions, it is only mind based. For me, mind is only half or one side of the picture. Heart is even more important, if not equal, to the mind. So if we are going to have this sustainable change and a continuous improvement and continuous innovation in an organization, we need to improve our information based decision making with heart and mind together. And that can only happen when we have a common purpose. Because then you will be making decisions for your strategy, for your vision, for your strategic execution in one direction, in a common direction. If you're shooting in various directions, that energy will be lost. So I hope I haven't confused anybody. Is that making sense? Any comments on that before I add a couple more things?
Yeah, I think this is a great time to, in fact, engage with the audience as well. So I would like the guys from the audience to kind of reflect on what Naveed mentioned about, going beyond the methodologies, but going, the thinking, the mindset, the part of the leadership, the passion, the purpose, and all of that stuff. So it would be interesting to see what the audience reflection is. So I would encourage people to put it in the chat box, and we'll come back to Naveed, your point. But let me give an opportunity to also Liz. Liz, you are part of a healthcare industry where the amount of regulation is much more than some of the other industries, software or technology or otherwise. And they probably, and maybe I'm exaggerating, they probably are 50 years behind when things need to be done, right? On top of what's already going on. 50 years may be an exaggeration, but at least a good few years before the regulations can be changed, the regulatory things can be changed. How or what have you seen, or how is it changing in your world, from being what we did back in the 90s to now in the area of operational excellence and continuous improvement?
Thank you. Well, there's, I think there's some very common themes to what the other speakers have said. In particular, the focus away from tools to results. And yes, it's a very highly regulated industry, but when you're talking about experience versus process, I think it's very relevant. So it's the experience of the patient. That is first and foremost, and that's what the regulations are there to protect. And so, if you turn it more from from the process view of we must comply with regulations to the experience side and understanding the potential impact on patients, and how would you feel if that was your partner, your mother, your child? It really sort of the level of passion and really sort of the focus of people within the organization are great. That's great. And I think that's because of that shift from we must follow, we must comply to why. And that's the most important thing for me around the experience. It's all around the what's in it for me. So if you're working with people within the process, you don't treat them like a robot. You treat them like, you've got valuable information. Explain to me what your pain points are, and that really helps with very productive discussions versus how do we fix the process. So it's more coming at it from their perspective, and then relating to the whole use of data, rather than data always driving the focus, you can use the data to validate the impact that you're having. So, employees are expressing frustration with certain parts of what they're expected to do, and you can use the data to quantify that, to feed back to senior managers. So it's not just about, people are finding this painful, it's relating it to the FTE time, the impact on the cycle time. And just as a reference to one of Julio's comments was when you mentioned about pit stops. Yes, Formula One has developed a lot over past years, but I worked at Jaguar, and I remember getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch the first Grand Prix that the Jaguar were involved in, and that was one of the most painful experiences. I think their pit stop actually took over a minute and a half, and while everybody else was doing it in seconds. So that's why these type of forums are so powerful, because it's not just where the industry or where everybody is on the continuum. If you start continuous improvement, you can learn very quickly from other organizations how to get from that really painful experience of how long it takes to change wheels compared to your competitors to, and we started looking at how do Red Bull do it. And they had some great examples on YouTube. There's some amazing videos on how they worked on reducing the cycle time. And of course, Red Bull were the team that took over the Jaguar part of the racing. So I think it shows that it's not just what you do, it's how you do it, and it's how you learn from others. And that for me is very much experience related. And just to sort of circle back to the initial question, 20 years ago, the focus was on what tools are you using? Is it Lean Six Sigma, or is it Six Sigma, or is it Lean? Now we talk Lean Six Sigma. We've got Agile. We've got so many different tools in our toolkit, and there's a lot more focus on what have you achieved, not what tools are you using to get there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, which is outcome based or results based compared to the process itself, and these are all good points that we can debate upon. Whether it's the destination that's more important than the journey itself, and in the journey you definitely have the experience with the tools and the technology. So, but let me kind of draw some analogy and talk about some of the challenges, right? I mean, and building on Naveed's point with Henry Ford, right? This was the craftsman, individual craftsman, and then we went to the assembly line, and where we were made to do jobs in silos, etc. And that has kind of continued, even though in the last 10, 15 years, with the digital revolution, we see a lot more involvement, and again, that craftsman side of things are coming back. But if you look at a macro level, what we find is organizations, a job description, for example, for a job, is still 5, 10 bullet points. Goals and objectives are again 5, 6 bullet points, right? Which explains there. The way you're going to measure it in your performance is against those goals and objectives, is against those job description. Okay, and then the data that we talk about is almost like as if it's a machinery, it's a robot which needs to do those 5, 10 things, or those based on the job description. The data is almost like controlling a process, statistical process controls, right? You can have a movement here or there. How has organizations, or how organizations changing this? Because until and unless you change that mindset of, what, your job is not just to do this but something else, what organizations should do, and what are some of the challenges that the organizations face in order to move away from box thinking into a more individual centric thinking? And anybody, this is when we start opening the floor. We also encourage audience to sort of continue putting their comments here. I already see a couple of comments there, but we'll come to the audience comments shortly. But let's talk about some of the shackles that organizations have that's preventing us, or challenges that organizations face that are preventing us to be more individual experience centric.
I think one of the comments that Sarah made earlier is really key around the involvement of all parts of the organisation, and you've got to have the senior leadership support, but also that support to think out of the box. And the comment about middle management really resonated with me. At Jaguar, we refer to the middle management as the layer of clay. Nothing passes through them. And they do restrict the freedom of the people within the business to be making changes and to be challenging the thinking. And similarly, the senior leadership, need to have that space and enable the individuals to be thinking outside the box, give them that ability and the openness. And some of the recent phrases I've heard are around fail and fail fast. So you learn from your experience. And so it's taking that, almost sort of taking a little bit of a step away from the risk-based approach to how can we do things differently.
I would like to add on Liz's comment, if I may. So what I think we need to think about, this is about how to alchemize the process, but I'm quoting my master black belt teacher, Gregory Watson here, with the triple loop learning. So what we typically do within the organizations, we do work, we get results. We do work, we get results. So that's like we are in this mouse circle. But then everybody needs, and that's what the workers need to do. They need to know their place. That makes them happy. But then if we go a next step beyond that, we need to think about the business environment. Where are we? So that's the clay work, like Liz, you said. So that's the middleman. To start thinking about how do we actually integrate the different parts of the organization that we operate properly. But that's not enough. And then the last is about the contextual thinking. So what is the business environment? What is changing? Like Naveed, you are challenging us with the future employees. So world is not static. We should not think about 130 years strategies anymore and how we operate or the business organizations. But the last bit is where the leadership should actually look at, are we doing the right things? So really asking the questions that, how do I actually make my company, to me, be more profitable? And I'm referring to my earlier statement that if we change the strategy every second year, does that really make our products any better for our customers? No. We need to start thinking outside in and within all these different levels. So everybody can be motivated, they can have their own space where they feel comfort, and they're having like this a company family feeling. I think that's needed for the future. But we cannot lose that. It has been there sometimes, but we need to go and find that.
He will not be using.
Very good, Naveed. I guess there are two people who were reflecting on your point. So let's hear some reflection from you, or some.
Yes, thanks for that, and I really appreciate it. There have been some wonderful comments in the last few minutes. I've been taking some notes actively. I'll share those later. But one of the things that really resonate with me is one of you said, from destination to journey, or from journey to destination. If you think about it, reflect on what is so powerful. Are we trying to improve the way people achieve their objectives so that they can achieve those objectives that we have set? Or do we want them to be themselves, have that autonomy, define an objective that is aligned with our shared vision, and they challenge themselves in that journey? So let me just rephrase that. So there is one thing called destination, and the other thing is the journey that we are all following. Are we to focus on that only that destination or that journey itself? For me, sometimes journey is more important than the destination. Because if the journey is set up right, if you have the right provisions, if you have the right continuous improvement mindset and the motivation behind that, what happens is you try to define your own path. We talked about fail fast. And if you do want to fail fast, you need to try out something that you haven't tried before, or you might be pivoting on a regular basis. When you try something new, there is a possibility of failing. There is a higher chance of failing. And if you're not failing, there is a big problem, because learning to fail and learning to handle failure is one of the most important skills of this century. Many people are so afraid and so risk averse that they don't take a risk. They don't want to fail fast. They just want to get it right the first time, which was the old mindset. I remember when I joined Xerox about 20 years ago, one of the things they said was, get it right the first time. There's something like that. There was a statement in our, and we followed that for a few years actually. And we realized it was the biggest barrier in our journey. We were trying to perfect our analysis so much, we were lost in analysis paralysis. We couldn't achieve the objectives. The competition was running so fast, they were failing here and there, but finding their way. So then that journey is one thing and the destination is the other. For me, that destination has something beyond that, as just making money. Again, that profitability would come in. Yes, profitability is crucial. We are in business, businesses need to be profitable. But that profitability should not cost the earth, should not cost the motivation of people, and should always be adding value to people's lives at all aspects, and should not cost anything to the globe. If you think about that, that is a destination, so a purpose beyond that destination. So when we are on a journey to achieve that goal towards a common destination, we are aiming, we are like shooting for the stars and capturing the moon on the way. And that doesn't have to be end of the year. That needs to be almost on a daily basis. Things that motivate us and energize us on it. And hence the Agile, Lean, Kanban, Lean Six Sigma, all these methodologies are there to help us set up the environment in a way that is in the right context, in the right way, for the right people, in the right setting, with the right leadership. That I would say is all attainable with that common purpose. Yes, I don't know.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm kind of going to reflect on a couple of points that you guys made. So, Liz, you brought about the fail fast, right? Julia, this is a question coming towards you. So what we see is, on one side, this is this doctrine, this is the advice that a lot of let's say industry gurus are giving, that you need to start looking at fail fast, because there's a lot of learning that happens when you fail. And yet, if you look at our educational system, where you need to be able to keep getting stellar marks or scores, etc., that you go up. Not just that, people in their careers, they try to be successful, and which is why, by design, majority of the stuff that gets done within an organization is against the philosophy of fail fast. Now, you guys are in the hospitality industry, where you leapfrogging this, you're moving to the experience, you're conducting a lot of experiments. How do you see the bridging of these two philosophies? On one side, individuals want to be extremely successful, but on the other side, they have not been used to dealing with fail fast in their let's say orientation from the past.
Thank you. I think it's a great question, and you see that the beginning of this is really empowerment. And when the teams are not empowered and they're allowed to fail or to not achieve a perfect score, they really don't want to take a risk, right? Because I'm the normal employee, right? So I have two options. I can do what I'm being told, and probably nothing will happen. Everybody will be okay with it, right? Or I can take the innovative, let me try a new approach. If it works, nobody will compliment me on it, right? I could deliver faster results, higher customer satisfaction. Nobody will talk about it, right? But oh God, if you fail, then the whole system will crash on you, right? They will come and they will poke you, they will mock you. It's terrible. So what we've done a lot in the hotels, especially when we conducted these trainings for process improvement, we really sat down with everybody in the process, right? So to give you a brief, silly example that you might be familiar with in your own organizations is you would get a report, right? This report is consolidated by one person. He spends maybe 10 hours putting it together. It goes out to 15 people. From those 15 people, maybe only one person looks at it. There's 200 data fields. This person takes one or two out to put into another report. So then you have these other 98 fields that the guy spent 9.5 hours putting together and nobody looks at, right? So we really went back to, okay, what's the full process? You put post-its to show the whole process. You bring everybody that's involved in and they have a look at it. And then you start to see that the people that had the lower grades within their companies had the most innovative ideas. And this was basically because they knew the struggle to put this report through. And when they realized that their peers that sat in nicer offices with bigger desks and nicer views, they didn't look at them, they got a bit frustrated because it was a lot of pain for them to put it together. And then they were like, wait a minute, so all of my work, you don't look at it, at least tell me so I'll stop doing it. And we put a unwritten rule in place. It was that if you wanted to add a report or if finance wanted to add a new report, they had to remove one of the actual reports.
Oh,
Then it really turned around the department, right? Because every time you want to implement change, finance will tell you, oh, we can't do it because the policy, right? And we really heard this because of the policy so many times, and Six Sigma was new in this hotel, that we took a different approach. Every time finance would tell us you can't because of the hotel policy, we would ask for the policy. And we realized that this, because of the policy excuse, was just a lame excuse because there were no policies relating to most of the changes we wanted to do. So it really goes back to empowerment and who would like to take the risk. Most people would rather, just carry on doing what they do, don't take any risks because there's no reward. And if it doesn't pay out, then they're gonna come and crash you. So you don't really want to be in that position. And on managers as well, it really depends who your manager is and what's the culture that you run within your department or the organization. Some people are terrified by change, because they've gone up the ladder because of their skills, their knowledge, their network. And when somebody removes one of these steps and wants to change it, they feel at risk, which is completely understandable. In hotels, it's very simple because what we need to do is make sure the rooms are clean and the food is warm. That's it, right? We're not doing open heart surgery or sending rockets to space. But in other industries, if you have the qualifications but not the experience, they might put you at a very high level. In hospitality, you see a mix of both. And when I started, I was, at a higher position at a very young age. And one of my team members came to me and said, Julio, I could be your father. I said, yes, you could very well be my father, but we're here to work together. And it took a bit of time to get people to understand how to get into it and how to be successful together. But it really comes down to empowerment.
Very nicely put, Julio. And I think this is also the time when I would ask you guys to look at the chat box and see if there are any questions. Liz, I know you've been quite active there, but let's look at some of the comments or reflections that's been made. John Himalayan, he says, treat people like a robot and they will act like a robot. Totally agree. Christine mentioned last year's pandemic onset brought about a tsunami of digital sales pitches, risking executives to buy systems and tools as band-aids rather than scalable solution. And then he continued to Naveed's point, in the end users in the operations suffer due to yet another change while they are expected to keep the the ship afloat, which is like a change fatigue, which a lot of organizations are facing these days. And then Chris Gunning mentioned on the tooling question that Liz brought up, we are starting to see fast acceleration and adoption of process mining just in the last 6 to 18 months, at least when it comes to looming at processes within business services like finance, HR, supply chain. Don't think we can ignore this. Just look at the phenomenal growth of Celonis, for example. Do any of the panelists have any experience, positive or negative, that they can share with the audience around trying to embody the such as new process mining digital technology? And then Liz, you've answered that, but if any of the other panelists would like to reflect, or Liz, if you want to add some more, please do so.
Yeah, I mentioned licensing costs because there is a specific issue at the moment where there's a discussion with the senior leaders around a system we're using to manage quality incidents, and the license cost actually constrains that, and quality should be everybody's business. So it's sort of that, really understanding what you want to use the systems and the tooling for to make them most effective, so that you're not going to be constrained by those factors. But for me, the most important thing is to get across the point that tooling or automation is so often seen as a silver bullet, and that's totally skipping past the experience, leveraging the knowledge of the people in the process. And we're looking at it to implement some tooling at the moment, but we've got a series of activities to improve the process before automating. Otherwise, you risk just making a poor process quicker, rather than really getting all of the benefits. So I think it's important that people recognise that tooling is part of the solution. It's not the only solution. You need to involve people and improve the process first.
Excellent.
I'd like to add that on tools, I think what we've seen in the industry is a lot of people have left hospitality with an idea of how to solve one little process. So it's things like upselling. If you go to a hotel and you check in, it's very rare that an employee will try to upsell you into a better room. When it comes to accounts receivable, there are certain systems that do the job maybe to 80%. So people have left the industry and they basically specialized in solving these little problems. And what they do is they do a model in which the hotel can have access to their systems, gets interfaced, and then the hotel pays a percentage of the incremental benefit that this new system or this new process brings to the operation of the hotel. So in our industry, we've seen that, and it's a way to reduce the licensing fees, because you basically pay a commission of the incremental revenue that you have, and that has been quite successful. And I'm sure in other industries, there's a lot of people that would already who could already had spotted certain defects in their internal processes. And sometimes it's easier to solve the problem as an outsider trying to sell a solution to a board of directors than trying to solve it internally yourself, because it's what you deal with day in, day out.
Very interesting angle, Julian. In fact, what I've seen from my own experience is people have a tendency of bringing outsiders in, just to make sure that they can get their voices heard, instead of trying to do it internally, because there's so much of politicking that takes place, so much of baggage and legacy which is there, kind of constrains the organization. But very, very interesting angle. Anybody else on sharing or reflecting on some of the comments that have been made by the people in the audience? Okay, so
there is one. So one is the comment on one of the comments I just saw from Mohit regarding getting the basics right. I think that's quite important. That's one thing, and the other one is comment about your earlier statement on the education system and the way we brought up. So I'll leave the second one for a while. If we get a chance, we can talk about that. It's a very important topic. Okay, so from getting the basics right, I think that brings us again to that point of destination versus the journey. If we are on a journey, the people who are on the journey need to appreciate that they need to add value, not to just to themselves, but to the people around them, to their teams. That means they need to challenge whatever is unnecessary in their surroundings, in their process, in their ways of working, in their work itself. Julius, your comments were excellent, very aligned with this. So when I love that comment about the finance teams, because they generally ask for things like, oh, I need that dashboard and this report and that report, and we keep on giving them. As a technology IT company or departments, we keep on giving them that piece of information, or not just finance, anybody, the leadership teams. One of the things that you said was you made a rule that if they want a new report, they need to get rid of an old one. That's excellent because they need to think, they need to challenge themselves. If they're asking for something new, that means something else wasn't working in the past. Either they consolidate the previous reports, reduce the content. And the other comment was out of the 100 fields that people are filling very actively, they have to put a lot of effort in. Somebody only looks at a couple of fields and they just pass on that report into the shell of filing cabinet, and they utilize that information to produce another report and for another level. So why are we wasting all of that? So that challenge, the point of all of this is, from my perspective, is if we push this change on people without getting the basics right, what's going to happen is they will feel that they need to act like a robot, meaning somebody is telling me to do something, okay, I will comply. Whereas if we develop the right mindset in people, that right motivation of continuous improvement, that mindset will help people to challenge those things themselves. So this has to come from inside out to an extent. Sari's early comment about outside in and inside out, I think both of them are equally important from my perspective. Sometimes the change is brought in from outside in, that triggers change inside, but then unless your intrinsic motivation drives that change, it is not sustainable. So inside out becomes more important later on than outside in. And that is the fine balance I've been seeing over the last couple of decades in helping all large organizations in their transformations. We need to drive the basics right, but we need to engage and keep the people within the teams as a owner of those changes rather than being a user of those suggestions or changes.
Yeah, I think that relates as well to a comment that Mohit made about attrition and absenteeism and focusing on those kinds of things, because that relates back to the employee experience, and involving them and motivating them is is an excellent way of dealing with that. But it's also interesting that in terms of reporting, you have financial reporting on a regular basis, but employee satisfaction tends to only be looked at once a year. So and yet your employees are so key to delivering the service, and also a potential huge cost if you keep on losing people. So how can we change that mindset so that everybody feels involved and valued, and that the culture, including the senior leadership, are looking at the right types of reports and not ignoring some sort of like really basic hygiene factors like how happy are the employees?
Yeah. So sorry. From that perspective, I just wanted to add this. In the past couple of years, we've been experimenting with some of these team emotional intelligence and inspired teams and inspired agile teams, inspired virtual teams, all those frameworks, and we've come together with brought these together and defined a way where you can actually run these in a higher frequency, like almost on a monthly basis, and you get a picture of what are the 3 key points or the pain points that need addressing in any given month. So you almost like define the subset of values for a month based on the people's satisfaction. So that framework has helped me enable and make the transformations sustainable over the last few years. We can have an offline chat on that, but I've found that very, very useful.
Excellent. Sorry, I think you wanted to say something.
No, it is really related. Navid, you almost responded on my side, on my behalf as well. So I was just going to say about how we measure our work. So, I mean, at least you refer to these annual personal development assessments or PDAs or whatever they are called within the organization. So once a year you will go through, okay, what actually happened, what the heck I'm going to do next year. Maybe not enough. I loved, Navid, your approach on that. But then also we need to think about like, what is actually the key? I mean, sales is typically measured by the value, the monetary value that they will get and bring in the money. But is that actually good enough? So should there be actually other measures so related to the customer experience and etc.? So what is actually the guiding the work for the salesman, which are the upfront within the organization? And then when you go to the testing or engineering, like in our company, what is actually driving? It's not the amount of fixes that we do in our processes. The volume of that, it should be, of course, going down. But if that's the only measure, which in our case, luckily it's not, but if you get my point, so we really need to think what drives the organization, what drives the motivation. So referring to Navid, your earlier comments, so we need to have some kind of rules within the reporting. What are actually the things that we want to measure and follow up? Financials are the ones, but what are the ones that are needed to drive our business to go further and people to stay, be happy to be part of the organization. So those were, and how we actually then steer the organization within the changing environment.
I love the exchange of ideas and information here. Absolutely brilliant. I wish we had another hour to continue the discussion, but as always, good things needs to come to an end. But before we kind of wrap up the session, there are a couple of things I wanted to say. One is, and I'm sure that based on the comments that we've seen from the audience, I would request, guys, that we want this dialogue to continue. So use Roundtable Insights page on LinkedIn, where we regularly post. Use those threads to continue asking these questions or reflection. Chris, and I'm talking about both Chris Gunning and Chris Seam. I saw that there was a bit of an interaction going on. Mohit, you've contributed. John Hamelian, you've contributed. Any suggestions, any thoughts that you have, let's bring that to that table as well, because this is digital platform, and we want to continue the discussion. That was part of the initial thinking for Roundtable Insights as well. And now for the final wrap up, we all work under constraints, whether it's our organizational constraint, whether it's our personality constraint, or whether it's our thinking constraint. If we were to change something in the next couple of years, whether it's something in our organization or something about us, the way we think, or something in the technology, what would that be? And this is going to be for each one of the panelists here. So maybe, Navid, we start with you, and then we'll have the others follow. So if there's something that you need to change.
We need to think big, but act very, very small. When I say very small, it actually it's almost like a couple of minutes a day kind of change that you need to work towards. And I'll give you an example. So if I want to improve my health, yes, I should exercise, but also need to manage my dietary needs. My change, so my objective or my purpose is to live a healthy life. Healthy life doesn't mean I'm a big bodybuilder. That means my internal systems need to function well, and my stomach and liver need to function well for the body to function well, right? So my change for that purpose is to start eating, let's say, 1 grain of sugar less than I ate yesterday. From my perspective, that is the key to change, or sustainable change that doesn't trigger the reptilian brain for resistance to the routine. And this is I found this fascinating. For the last 10 years, I've been experimenting on myself, my family, my friends and people around me on trying this out. If you want to bring a big positive change in any part of the world, or your organization or yourself or your family or whatever, start very, very small, but do it consistently, and do it so small that the resistance mechanisms don't even notice it. You want to reduce sugar, you just reduce 1 grain of sugar from the things you consume on a daily basis. And that's my key message to you. Focus on the journey, but have a focus on your purpose while you're on that journey. it is a reinforcing mechanism.
One less sugar grain in my coffee. Yeah, that's a great start. Thank you. Yeah, I actually did that. I reduced my number of beers, but I increased the percentage of alcohol content. I'm just joking. But okay, cool. Any? Yeah, sorry. What's
Yes.
yours?
Yeah, I would probably. I love Navid. I fully agree. We need to start from ourselves first. But I'm referring to the earlier discussions. So what we need to do, we have the data. That's today's world. So we need to use the data wisely. We also need to listen our people and learn. So we need to combine both of those. And what we need to do is to seek for the long-term targets with daily these drops of sugar. What do we actually do? So think and make the organization empowered the way that it kind of starts gradually changing its own behavior by itself. And then be brave enough to test, trial out, pilot things. I think within the large organizations, we are not doing that enough. So we need to be brave, build learning within the organization, be brave, bold, take conscious risk to innovate and build new.
Very good. Brave, bold, and something new.
Yeah.
Julia.
I think that the real challenge it really boils down to change. I think organizations need to come out with creative ways to analyze all of their data points and comes with something called the ROI of change, where you push people out of their zone of comfort, but they see the benefits, so they get a reward. Otherwise, why change? And if that doesn't work, then as we discussed earlier, you have the strategy, the performance, and the leadership. And if the performance is not there and you cannot change, then you have to change the management.
Fire your boss. Great stuff there. Liz, finally to you.
But just to add to what the other panelists have said, whether it's an incremental one sugar grain per day, or whether it's a big bang change, and also whether it's a change in the process or whether it's a technology change, for me the most important thing is communication and collaboration. You have to have a really clear view of what's in it for me, for all of the people involved, and for them to feel that as well. And then change becomes a lot easier. That enables the culture change, that it changes the mindset. And a point that was made earlier was around the not getting recognized for when you make a big improvement, but you do if things go wrong. Really driving that focus on recognition, and that's something we're trying really hard to do. Whenever there's improvements that have involved people going above and beyond, that's recognized both sort of financially, but also more importantly, visible recognition of the right kind of behaviors. And that's one of the ways to change. Culture change is one of the hardest things to do, but it's setting the example and showing recognition, but bringing everybody along on the journey.
Bringing everybody along the journey. Absolutely brilliant. Thanks, Liz, for sharing that. And so with that, we will now come to the end of the session. So let me kind of quickly wrap up in a couple of sentences here. The topic was Alchemize thinking from process to experience-centricity, right? I think all our panelists, as well as some of the members in the audience, have contributed significantly into what this topic was all about. I would just add a couple of things here. Alchemy. It's essentially a mix of a lot of the things that you guys talked about, right? Navid, you talked about the entire thing about leadership, people, purpose. Sari, you talked about some of the methodologies which people follow. Liz, you talked about more the business experiences, and Julio, you talked about the experience nature of the hospitality and how things are changing. So I think combining all of these, which is the alchemy, essentially will take us to experience centricity. One thing that all of you alluded to, and I'm just going to call it out, is called learning. And I think what we need to do is going into the future, we have to reset the way we think. And the first starting point for that is learning. And this is how we're going to skill up for for the coming world. How are we going to educate ourselves, our customers, our suppliers, our bosses, our subordinates. That is going to be the catalyst and in the alchemy that we are planning to do. With that, I would like to thank all our panelists. It was a great session and hope to see you again in another session like this soon. And for those of you who are in the audience, please come and join us in LinkedIn. We would love to hear your views. We would love to get your reflection. And as our panelists have already started putting their LinkedIn connects, please connect out with them and continue the dialogue. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz, Sari, and Julia, and